All right, well, if anyone else can come in, that'll be okay. I don't want to keep everyone waiting. So welcome to today's program. I'm really glad you could join us. This is our first Zoom program, and we're glad that we can bring you some programs while the museum is still closed. I'm Heather Yenco. I'm the curator here at the museum, and I just wanted to go over a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. This afternoon, I'll spend about 20 minutes talking about some of the artifacts in our collection and the stories that they tell. And then after that, you'll each have an opportunity, if you would like to share briefly about your own object and its significance to you. So you've all been muted by default, and use the chat box if you have any questions during the presentation. As I said, that's the button you can find at the bottom center of your screen, and it should pop up the chat on the side. So after my presentation, if you want to share the object, you'll type that in the chat. And then I think it'll be Barbie, either Barbie or Amy, who are my two tech support people today, will say your name, and then you'll be given permission to unmute yourself. And then when you're finished sharing, you'll mute yourself again. I'll go over all that after the presentation. And just so you know, we are recording this program, and it will be available later on our website. So if you can hear me well, can you just give me a thumbs up or thumbs down if you can't? All right, it's looking good. I see a bunch of thumbs up. Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll get started. This first item is a drawing by Minnie Evans. Let's see. All right, there we go. Hopefully there's no reflections. Okay, so this drawing was donated to the museum in 2009, and it was drawn by Minnie Evans around 1943. With waxed pencil and crayon. So Minnie Evans first started creating art in 1935, and she had visions that compelled her to draw. She's quoted as saying, "My art is as strange to me as it is to others." So, and she would use materials on hand that she had, so scrap paper, ledgers, even discarded window shades. So Minnie was born in Pender County in 1892, and she moved to the Wrightsville Sound area of Wilmington in 1903. Here, if I get it a little closer. I'll bring up a slide in a minute too, you can see it even more. So she was hired to work at Airlie in 1948. She managed the gate there, and she worked there till about 1974. And this is where she really did the bulk of her artwork. A lot of her paintings at this time look like Gardens of Eden, and they're much more detailed than this early one. But she started selling her drawings at Airlie for as little as $1 to interested visitors. Okay, so Amy, can you share the slideshow now? So Airlie, let's see, maybe.
Yes, let's see.
So up on, when the slideshow comes up, there we go. So there's a photograph of Minnie working on one of her paintings at Airlie, and then that's a scan of the drawing that we have in our collection. It's rare that she signed some of her early work, but this one is signed, and it was authenticated by the person who bought it from the art gallery. But Evans did gain notoriety during her lifetime. She held her first exhibition in Wilmington's Little Gallery in 1961, and she was represented by Nina Howell's Star in New York starting in 1964. She even had a solo exhibition at the Whitney Museum of American Art in 1975. Today, her work is in the collections of major art museums across the country, including the National Museum of American Art. And Barbie will put in the chat box, if you'd like to learn more about Minnie Evans, there'll be a chat to the Smithsonian's American Art Museum page and the 3 images of hers that they have in her collection. All right, so I'm gonna move this one. Thanks, Amy. So the next item is Meadowlark Lemon's jersey from the Harlem Globetrotters basketball team. He wore this around 1970 while he was a player. It's got his number 36 on the back. And this was donated in 1971 by Meadowlark Lemon himself. The Globetrotters, in case you aren't familiar, they're a basketball team that plays exhibitions, and they combine athleticism, theater, comedy into their games. They were created in the 1920s, and they provided one of the few opportunities for African Americans to play professional basketball at the time. When Lemon joined the Globetrotters, they were playing for crowds that were larger than for NBA teams like the Celtics and the Knicks. So at a time, they were one of the most popular teams, basketball teams around, and they still are playing. They're still active, according to their website. So Meadowlark Lemon grew up in Wilmington in the Taylor Homes housing development. He learned basketball at the Community Boys and Girls Club, and he graduated from Williston in 1952. He said he first saw the Globetrotters play in a newsreel at a local theater, and he said that he had received a vision, a dream in his heart. He knew he had to play for them. And so he joined them in 1954 after serving for a couple years in the Army. And he played from 1954 to 1978 and was known as the Clown Prince of basketball. He played in more than 16,000 games and more than 100 countries. Amy, if you can turn the slideshow back. So here's the publicity shot of Meadowlark and him playing in one of the games. Both of these photos are in our collection as well. And even this past October, the Wilmington City Council and the Wilmington Commission on African American History dedicated the 3rd Street Bridge between Hanover and Campbell Streets as the Meadowlark Lemon Memorial Bridge. And some of the current players of the Globetrotters put on a bit of a show during the dedication. Move this over. All right, thank you, Amy. All right, so the next item, I don't see. Oh, and then there's an information about Meadowlark more in the chat box if you're interested. So the next artifact is a finger painting by Ruth Faison Shaw, and a Shaw finger painting kit from the 1950s, which has a roll of paper in it, some tongue depressors, and some really dried up finger paints that are all labeled Shaw finger paint. So plenty of colors. Black. There's some bright ones. I like the really bright red one, but they're like solid. So Ruth Faison Shaw was a teacher in Wilmington prior to World War I, and then she went overseas with the YMCA during World War I, and then started teaching in Italy after the war. And it was there in Italy where she claims that she first used finger painting as an educational tool in 1931. She knew she didn't originate the idea of painting without a brush, but she claimed she'd be the first to try it in the education of young children. In 1933, she opened Shaw Finger Painting Studio, New York, and had finger paints made and sold under her name. She resolved to use non-toxic, safe paints, and once said, "For most things that children get on their hands eventually disappear into their mouths. And while I had no intention of flavoring my colors, at least I meant them to be of ingredients which could be licked with impunity." So for the 1930s, I think that was rather progressive of her. I'll put this up too. So Shaw saw finger painting as a way for children to express emotions before they were verbally able to do so, and it also as a therapeutic tool for children to rid themselves of, quote, inarticulate fears and secret obsessions. Amy, if you can share the slideshow. So there's the scan of the painting that Shaw did, which to me seems really more, it looks like a watercolor and more detailed than a finger painting that I would ever think of. excuse me, Shaw retired to Chapel Hill in 1959 and worked with patients in the psychiatry department at the North Carolina Memorial Hospital. And a large collection of her paintings were donated to UNC. And if you would like to see an article of Shaw in Life magazine, along with some photos of her making art, that link will be in the chat box as well. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Amy. Okay, so this next item is a bit fragile, so it's staying in its box. It is a prop from the American Gothic television show from 1995. I brought it up because if you follow our Twitter, you'll see it may be familiar to you. So the Yorkshire Museum in the UK does a hashtag curator battle, and they did one for hashtag creepiest object, and we included this as our creepiest object, and we went about as viral as we ever have. We were in some national publications that mentioned the creepy objects in museums. We are pretty excited about how popular this creepy doll is. But it's just one example of numerous film props that we have in our collection. So this doll was donated in 2005 by Jeff Goodwin, who came to Wilmington in 1984 to work in the film industry here. He does makeup and special effects. He did a lot of different types of special effects over the years, especially before CGI became popular. His first movie in Wilmington was Cat's Eye, where he was a makeup artist, and he's also donated a few items from the Cat's Eye movie as well. He also created the ear that Kyle MacLachlan finds in Blue Velvet, which was filmed here in 1986. We had that ear on exhibit during our Starring Cape Fear exhibit a few years ago. Jeff loaned it to us. It was so realistic and creepy and felt like a real ear. It was pretty gross and fantastic. So Jeff Goodwin continues to work in the film industry here. He most recently worked on shows like Good Behavior, Six, and Swamp Thing. So it seems to be when there's a show filmed here in town, he's on it, working in makeup. And he received the International Society of Makeup Artists Lifetime Achievement Award in 1993. All right, Amy, if you want to share the slideshow. So Jeff also donated the head, foot, and hand from one of the original mutant turtles from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie that was filmed here. And so this is the head, which quite frankly, I find even creepier than the doll. He's like, it's made of latex, and many museums that have items like this, usually movie props, are having the same issue where they are disintegrating and there's not much you can do about it. So this head is slowly cracking and falling apart, and which makes it even creepier. And on the other side of the screen is a photo of the character of Merlin Temple, who had the doll. It looks like before it got bloodied and burnt in the photo. And it's actually Sarah Paulson, if she looks familiar to you. She's known for the American Horror Stories series. She played Marcia Clark in the O.J. Simpson story. And she was in Mrs. America on FX just recently, which is pretty good if you're into that. So, all right, thanks, Amy. All right. This thing is really heavy. This is a check writing machine. It was donated in 2015. It was used by the Gray family at their Greyhound taxi company in the 50s, which was located at 9th and Castle Streets. So to operate this, well, before I tell you how it operated, so there was an issue with checks where you could forge them rather easily if it was handwritten in what the amount was. So to cut down on that, there are these machines called paymasters that were made, and you would put the blank check in the bottom of it, set the knobs to the correct correct amount and then push this knob down to stamp the check. It's incredibly heavy. And so doing this, it was harder to change the number on the check when it wasn't written by hand. So I pulled this item out. We have a lot of items about the Gray family and a wide range of types of items. This one I thought was interesting because it's not something you see very often, but it is just one item that represents the Gray family. So Dr. Samuel James Gray, he immigrated to the United States from Jamaica in 1930. He was a physician, an entrepreneur, and a real estate developer. He was involved in the early development of Ocean City, which was an African-American beach community founded in 1949 on Topsail Island. And he worked as a physician at Wilmington's community hospital and at a private practice serving Wilmington's Black population. In 1956, Dr. Gray was one of 3 local African-American doctors who sued the James Walker Memorial Hospital for admitting privileges. They lost their first suit, but they finally won the right to practice there in 1964. Amy, if you can share the slideshow. So the Gray family owned, in addition to Greyhound Taxi, the Rainbow Laundry, and the Rainbow Barber Shop. Dr. Gray died of lymphoma in 1965, but his widow, Gwendolyn Stinson Gray, continued to run the businesses after he died. So there's a picture of them with 2 children on one side, and then Dr. Gray's clinic on the other side of the slide. Mrs. Gray was fascinating as well. She was a classically trained concert pianist who attended the Juilliard School, and she was friends with Duke Ellington. We have a nice Christmas card signed by Mr. Ellington that he mailed to his friends. So we've got a pretty wide range of items from the Grays in our collection. And in addition to that letter, we have some of Mrs. Gray's shoes, hats, and clothes. She was quite stylish. There's some fantastic items in there. If you'd like to know more about the Gray family, there's 2 links that'll be in the chat box. This collection has been given to us over the years by Dr. and Mrs. Gray, one of Dr. and Mrs. Gray's daughters, Tony, and she's been great going through everything with us and really showing a lot of different aspects of one African-American family in Wilmington. So, all right. Thank you, Amy. Okay. This fabulous hat, which I'm going to turn it because it has some great silhouette or lines no matter what angle you have it. But it was donated in 1998. It was owned by Hannah Block, who was a civic leader in Wilmington for 70 years. She was a frequent judge of beauty pageants and organized a number of pageants herself in the 50s and 60s. And this hat she used with some of those women in the pageants, including Asheville native Maria Beal Fletcher, who became Miss North Carolina in 1961 and Miss America in 1962. And so far, as far as I can tell, is the only Miss North Carolina to become Miss America. So Ms. Block was involved in much more than pageants. She was head lifeguard at Carolina Beach from 1940 to 1949 and was the first woman in the state to hold such a position. She taught swimming and life-saving courses through the local Red Cross, and in 1949 organized the first aid station on Carolina Beach Boardwalk. She also helped organize the first Azalea Festival pageant after World War II, and she chaired the Queen and Court Committee during the festival. She also served on Wilmington City Council from 61 to 63 and held the post of Mayor Pro Tem. Amy, if you want to share the slideshow. So there's a portrait of Block and a picture of her as a lifeguard at Carolina Beach. From the 1960s, she also became active in historic preservation in downtown Wilmington, and she bought and restored a number of buildings. In the 90s, she rescued the old USO building, which had become the Community Arts Center. So during World War II, she organized entertainment and played piano for the troops in the USO building. So the center in 2005 was renamed in her honor, and the piano she played on is on display in their museum. So she was a character, did a lot of stuff in town, and if you'd like to know more about her, there'll be a link in the chat box. And also in that link, there's a photo of her swimsuit she wore as a lifeguard, which we also have in her collection, or in our collection. All right. Thank you, Amy. All right, so we have one more item. It's 3 items, but it's our last one. And it was donated in 1984 by Milo Manley, who was the son of Alexander Manley. So it's a book of newspaper clippings from the Daily Record and other newspapers from around 1898. But before I talk more about the artifact, just a bit of background for those of you who aren't familiar with 1898. All right, so in 1897, North Carolina's, that'll be closer, I think that was, all right. So in 1897, North Carolina's Democratic Party decided to embark on a white supremacy campaign to try to drive populist and Republican politicians out of office during the 1898 election. The campaign used speeches, propaganda cartoons, and the threat of violence to create support for white supremacy. In the run-up to the election, Alexander Manley's African-American newspaper, the Daily Record, became a symbol of African-Americans' power. On November 8th, Democrats won a rigged election, and on November 10th, a large crowd marched through town from the Wilmington Light Infantry Armory to the Love and Charity Hall that was on 7th and Nunn Streets, where the Daily Record was printed. The crowd burned the building, and a violent mob took to the streets and attacked African Americans on the north side of town. An unknown number of African Americans died, and others were banished from the city. After the violence and political turmoil of 1898, Wilmington and the rest of North Carolina disenfranchised African American voters and passed a slew of laws that segregate people on the basis of race. So the book, which is incredibly important for the history of this, came to us in '84 in this book of typefaces that Manley could have used in his work. So it has like different typefaces from here, and pasted over every page were clippings from newspapers and so a few full issues of newspapers. So in 1991, the museum had all the contents conserved. So that's why they are in these incredibly nice books that are in acid-free bindings that we can easily now turn through so you can see them without damaging the newspapers any further. Included in all these clippings were 3 full copies of the Daily Record. Very few issues are known to remain, so we're lucky to have 3 of them. And it includes the editorial that What Is There to Fear, which actually, Amy, if you want to turn the slideshow on, it'll be a scan of this page and a close-up of the editorial where Manley or someone in the Daily Record is encouraging African Americans to vote despite rumors of violence. So these clippings are a window into the life before and after the 1898 white supremacy campaign from both local and national newspapers. And there's even a piece of anonymous hate mail, which I will not read, that was in with the clippings. So Barbie's going to put in the chat box the link to more information about both 1998 and our preservation project. All right, Amy, if you want to move to my screen, this is the piece of hate mail that's in there. Well, most of them are newspaper clippings talking about 1898. All right, so that is the selection of objects. We have 56,000 objects in the collection, so it was a bit to choose which ones to talk about today. I hope you found some of this interesting. And if we want to move on, if anyone has any questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat box. I really wasn't looking at them, but I don't see any questions. I guess we'll start now on our next section or part of the program. So if anyone's interested in sharing an object from their life that has significance to them, we're going to put it in the chat box that you'd like to share, and we'll unmute you and let you share. All right, it looks like it doesn't have to be relevant to Wilmington. No, it does not. It looks like Darcy's was the first one to mention. So Darcy, if you want to unmute yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Darcy. I actually also work at Cape Fear Museum, and I just wanted to share something with y'all today that I think is pretty cool. This is a painting that my best friend made for me. It's of the Aurora Borealis, and it was really fun for me because she was learning how to paint while she did this, and so she would send me her previous versions, and I can tell you definitively that she got much better throughout the process. And also my dog chewed the corner of it, so not only does it remind me of my best friend, it also reminds me of my sweet puppy dog.
Oh, yeah, Amy, could you switch it to speaker view so people can see her on full screen? Thank you, Lisa, for mentioning that.
Here's the painting again to see it.
Thanks, Darcy.
Heather, it looks like Elizabeth is next.
Okay. All right, Elizabeth, if you want to share. Oh.
It says Elizabeth Marie Klein.
Elizabeth, we're having trouble hearing you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Now, yes.
We can hear you now.
You can hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I have this cribbage board, which was made by my partner's father. And my partner, Dan, taught me how to play cribbage. Now we play all the time. It's a thing that's a really big part of his family. I love playing cribbage now. I think the board is really cool because it's made out of a piece of wood from their family's home. So I really enjoy playing this game now and having this little piece made by his father.
That is fantastic. Are you playing it a lot since we've all been home during quarantine?
Yes, it's just right out here on the kitchen table and we play all the time now.
My family and I have been playing Phase 10 card game a lot. So you find new things to do. It's been fun.
Yeah, and cribbage is great for improving my mental math speed.
Nice. Thank you.
It looks like next up is Dennis.
All right.
Sorry, Dennis, I'm trying to find you. There we go. Dennis, I've sent you a request to unmute. You see the unmute button?
Okay.
Go ahead, Dennis. We can hear you now.
Okay, I have a photo. It's not directly relevant to Wilmington, except that I know at least one of the people in the photograph. Photograph was taken at Chapel Hill in 1954, and the individuals are 3 members of the faculty at the university, plus a special visitor who was the one in the light colored coat in the center of the photograph. He is Sir Ronald Fisher, who is widely regarded as the father of statistics. The individual behind him is the man who was my professor in graduate school, which is the reason I have the photograph.
That's great, Dennis. I didn't realize that was why you're here in North Carolina. You went to Chapel Hill for statistics.
No, I didn't go to Chapel Hill. I'm located here much later.
Oh, okay.
But this is a collection of very famous statisticians.
That's really great. Thank you, Dennis.
I see a comment from David that says Fisher's t-test. I don't know if that means he wants to share or.
Well, Fisher's student, who was known as Student, is the one who developed the t-test, not Fisher himself. There's a connection, though.
Would anyone else like to share? If you would, just put your name in the, okay, it looks like Lisa is next.
Hi, I'm Jim Downey. I'm married to Lisa Coates. I had picked up this book at, I don't know where I got it, probably at a thrift shop. It's called The Film Junkie's Guide to North Carolina. And I had to have this book when I found out that Wilmington's nickname is Wilmywood and how many films were made here. And when I got this book, I thought, oh yeah, I got to see what was, I knew Blue Velvet was filmed in Wilmington, but I didn't know what else. And when I opened up the book, I saw that it was, this book came out in 2004, and whoever bought it in 2004 and gave it, someone named Connie gave it to Paula as a gift in 2004. And inside the book was also a piece of Star News from Ben Steelman from 2004 talking about the film industry. And the only other thing in it was a little postcard. And the postcard says, if you couldn't make it to the party, you could buy a copy of this book at Bristol Books in Winston-Salem. So apparently that's where Connie bought this book and sent it to Paula. And I think that every Wilmingtonian should have a copy of this, especially if they're film junkie like me. So that's it.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. So Jan posted, she wonders if it's Connie Nelson from the CVB. So we know a Connie who's active with the film industry. I love getting books like that from thrift stores where you just find random stuff inside of it. So that is fantastic.
Looks like Buck has something also.
All right, Buck.
Mute. Okay. I feel like an artifact, presenting an artifact here. I'm a volunteer at Cape Fear Museum, and I'm very, very pleased to be doing that. The story begins with about 60 years ago when I was an aerial lineman with the Chesapeake Potomac Telephone Company in Maryland. I've got a photo here. I don't know if it'll come up or not. Can you see the photo at all?
Right, raise it up a little bit, like there you go.
Okay, the person the highest on the pole is me, and that's my co-worker, Ray. And Ray, you'll see, is using an electric drill. We had just gotten equipped with electricity on the trucks, and all other holes that had to be drilled in the telephone pole for the hardware that would suspend cable had to be done by hand. And I just happened to have acquired one of those drills, and I've got it here right behind me. If I can get it on the screen, just a second. Can you see anything on the screen?
Lower the screen a little bit more. There you go.
There it is, right there. This is the brace that we would use, and this is the length of the bit that was necessary to drill through the average telephone pole. We had to do that until we got equipped with electricity. So essentially, that is an artifact from, like I said, over 60 years ago.
So how old were you when you were doing that, Buck?
I was probably 20.
That's crazy you were climbing up there. Do you have any scars, anything else left from climbing those telephone poles?
It's a condition called cutting out, when your gaff slips out of the pole, and the natural reaction is to hug the pole. When you hug the pole, you end up with splinters in your arms. And I've got a few of those.
Ugh.
Still, even at my age.
Yeah, that was a great story. Thank you so much, Buck.
Okay, thank you.
Heather, I think maybe Jim Graham would like to share.
Okay.
So we have a coffee grinder from how long?
It's well
over 100 years ago.
Show how it works.
So you insert the coffee beans through, here, let me see, through that little hole, you open it, and then what you do is you twist this all the way around, and then it'll come out this little drawer right here. We actually used it today.
That's great. I was going to ask if you still used it. So
Yeah.
was it in your family for 100 years?
Yes.
So we initiated a new generation today.
Yes.
That's fantastic. Does it make a really good cup of coffee?
Yeah, it also grinds peanuts real well.
Oh, I bet.
Yes.
I have some cast iron skillets that are over 100 years old that I cook on daily. It's something about those old kitchen utensils that are just still work really well.
Show them how you adjust the size.
Oh, yeah. So there's a way you adjust it. So I don't know if you can see it, but right there's a little knob right there. That part, if you turn it, you adjust it.
You can grind it in big pieces.
Yeah, you can grind it in big pieces, or you can grind it in little pieces.
Oh, nice. So you could do French press and espresso using it.
Yep.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I know how to mute.
Heather, I think that's everyone that's queued up for right now. If we've missed anybody, wave a hand or let us know.
If you have any other questions about anything we do here, happy to chat.
Amy, do you want to unmute Jim Graham? I think they have a question.
I think I just did.
What do you do? What happens if an artifact breaks down when you're open? Like it just breaks down.
Well, we don't tend to use artifacts like they were in the past. So if something was electric, we don't plug it in. We tend, like the machine I was showing with the check writing machine, like I'm not actually going to try to write a check with it. So we don't really have to worry about things breaking down. We do have to be sure that things like our papers and our paintings, some of the more fragile items I showed you, we have to be really careful that they're not going to disintegrate or deteriorate anymore, which is why they're in like these nice bound books or the blue box that the doll was in. I didn't bring it out of the box because her dress is so fragile that handling it would break it. So we keep these items in storage under lock and key. They're in acid-free containers. It's dark in there. Only specific people are allowed to go access the collection. So that's how we keep things as best we can for the future. And I don't plug things in that have those like really old frayed cords, because
Yeah, so most of those items haven't seen the light of day in a while.
that's correct. Most of these have been in storage. The Daily Record newspaper clippings, they've been shown a bit more frequently lately because people are interested in it. But we try to keep them closed and under in the dark to keep them. They're also scanned at high resolution, so you could read every single one of those pages if you wanted to, if you go to our website.
That's pretty cool.
Thanks.
I think Cheryl had a question asking what was the date on Hannah Block's hat.
Oh, it was from about 1960, early 1960s. Do you have any other questions or comments? Well, if we don't have anything, oh, yeah, thank you everyone for sharing. That was fantastic. It's great seeing what other people have in their homes, and that, you know, that coffee grinder could easily be something that's in the museum. I don't think we have a coffee grinder like that, so that's pretty fantastic. It's neat to see what people treasure and find significant in their own lives. So thank you so much. We do have a cool collection. Thank you. Yeah, it's pretty fun. It runs the gamut. If it's something that you'd be interested in seeing more about, we can certainly highlight more pieces of the collection. We also highlight pieces on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. We try to kind of pick a theme every month and show different items in the collection. So.
And please, everyone, if you'll find the survey link in the chat box, we would love to do this program again. And so if there are artifacts you would like to see, or if there's a historical theme that you would like us to focus on, please click on the survey link. We would love to find out what you're interested in seeing.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for spending your Sunday afternoon with us.